Although it often feels like it, our circumstances are not the direct cause of our emotions. It is actually our thoughts about our circumstances that directly create our emotions. Let me share a story that happened during World War II as a vivid illustration. During her imprisonment at Ravensbrück concentration camp, Corrie ten Boom discovered lice in the straw of her and her sister's bed. It was full of lice. Later, the guards chased them into the woods where they were to sleep on the ground. Still later, they discovered fleas in their overcrowded barracks. Betsy encouraged Corrie to thank God for the fleas, but Corrie could find no good reason to. Betsy explained that there's little supervision within the barracks because of the fleas. So it's the fleas that keep them from additional attack from the guards and even make their Bible studies possible. Corrie marveled at her sister's positive spirit despite their deplorable conditions. We kind of marvel at this too, right? The Hiding Place is one of my favorite books, all about Corrie ten Boom and her amazing story, full of wisdom and grace. I highly recommend it. And Corrie's lessons, they didn't stop at the end of the book, because you see, later, after her circumstances actually improved, she still had amazing things to share and lessons that she learned. When she was finally released and regained her health, she began traveling around the world giving her testimony for Jesus. Another of her popular declarations is, "Love is the strongest force in the world, especially when we include our enemies." In 1947, she was speaking to a crowd and a man spoke to her afterwards and said that he had been a guard at Ravensbrück. But since that time, he had become a Christian and believed God had forgiven him for the cruel things that he did there. She recognized him right away as the guard who was so cruel to her and her sister Betsy. He asked, "Will you please forgive me?" as he extended his hand. She admits that this was gut-wrenching, but placing all of her trust in God, she followed the biblical command, grabbed his hand, and said yes with all of her heart. Her words are remembered. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the door of resentment and the handcuffs of hatred. It is the very power that breaks the chains of bitterness and the shackles of selfishness. Sometimes it can be the craziest of circumstances that cause the most growth. I have found myself looking back and realizing although I would have never asked for some circumstances, they have caused a lot of growth that has made me who I am. I'm sure you feel this way too. And we wouldn't change those parts that have grown. So in an indirect way, we could say that we are kind of grateful. This helps me when I'm filing away experiences in a better place, and it helps me to learn from them rather than becoming resentful. Because we all have circumstances that we may not like at some point in our lives. We may or may not handle those with grace. We may have even brought the circumstance on ourselves or possibly just made it worse. We likely have people around us who are also in less than ideal circumstances. After listening to some of my clients, I am amazed at the pain that people are walking around in, and somehow they are still functioning. They may be in a type of survival mode or frozen functioning, it's called, but still they're making it and managing. And I wonder how. But another question that I ask and get asked is, how do they or we change our thoughts when our circumstances are not improving? we come to a realization that the only thing we can change, the only thing we actually have control over changing, is our thoughts. Even when our thoughts about our circumstances are true, they could be provable in a court of law, that kind of true. But we have to ask if those thoughts are serving us. Not are they true or not. Are they serving us? That is the real question, the question that matters the most. Because if these thoughts are causing us to have negative emotions or to take actions we don't want to take, or maybe they're causing us to not take actions and therefore they're keeping us stuck, then these thoughts, even the true thoughts, are not serving us. They're not helping us to be the best that we can be. Job is another example of one who endured the ultimate worst circumstances, yet he still knew his circumstances. He also recognized they were not a punishment, and he found a way to praise God. Prior to his immense trial, he was highly respected and considered to be very wise. Many sought counsel from him, and that didn't change. He was still wise. Only his circumstances changed, and others stopped seeking that counsel. Maybe Job stayed silent out of humility, or maybe because he was simply out of strength. Whatever it was, but in his providence, God can use our circumstances in very powerful ways. Job's story reminds us of who the author of our story is. We can rest knowing that God is in control and He is working in all of our circumstances. Have you ever had a circumstance that you desperately wanted to change? Have you ever found that God didn't change your circumstance, but rather He changed you? Charles Spurgeon has said, "I have learned to kiss the wave that strikes me against the rock of ages." Until next time, this is my hope for you. You can find me at stephaniejohns.com or on the gram at The Hope Coach. You can also use the links below to join my email list or the form for one-on-one coaching.